What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Full Tank Truck Talk here on YouTube. I'm your host, Phil Eastman, host of the Full Tank with Phil podcast, where each and every week you can get any of your Cup Series betting action in. So give the latest episode a look for Texas coming up. And also, if you're into horse racing, the Full Tank with Phil podcast has a double episode this week as we break down the Kentucky Derby, all 20 horses. We take a look at that and extra action. Who doesn't like that? I know degenerates out there everywhere are excited for this weekend, and things start with Friday Night Lights. It doesn't get better than that. The trucks under the lights on Friday night. We've got a Texas Motor Speedway lined up here at 8 o'clock Eastern time, and we'll get to that in just a second. But on this episode, we're going to do a quick race recap of what we saw at Rockingham. Things went well, and then we will get into Texas, just kind of give the lay of the land here for Texas, and then talk about the best bets that we have this week. Try to keep things quick and simple, talk about some outrights, got a placement or two, and then matchups. We remain absolutely on fire with matchups in the Truck Series. We'll talk about it and then wrap things up. So let's get to it here, as I'm very excited to recap what we saw at Rockingham, because Tyler Ankrum is your winner. Now, McAnally just came out of the gate swinging. We had Chandler Smith sitting second, so he was on the front row. Very high hopes for him. We had him for a top 5. That didn't work out. He ended up, outside of the top 10. But with Tyler Ankrum, he did not qualify well, and I was a little nervous about our bet with him. We're going to break down the bets that we hit in just a second, but he ends up winning the race, and just so good for him. He's now essentially locked into the playoffs. So just good stuff all around, because he's been Mr. Consistent so far this year in the Truck Series, and it was good to see. So McAnally starting off well with Smith and finishing well with Ankrum. So good stuff there for that team. And we had a week off, and now we are back to take on Texas. But the bets that we hit, we are continuing to dominate the head-to-heads, as I mentioned. Ankrum over Honeycutt was one that we had, and Honeycutt looked pretty decent, but Ankrum winning the race, you can't beat that. So we'll take Ankrum there. Hemrick over Jones, that was easy. And then we also had Riggs over Sammy Smith. That was a little closer. Riggs was finishing 11th, I believe. Smith was like 16th. So a little closer, but hey, 3-0, unbelievable. But the thing I was most happy about with Rockingham, looking back, if you remember, we talk about just some general conversation at the end of these videos. And at the finish line segment last week, I was talking about a lean that I had. I told you I was going to sprinkle a little bit something on it of my own. Wasn't like an official play, but I was personally going to play it. And Jake Garcia made me look and feel like a genius. He was 10-1 to finish in the top 5 when I was recording the episode, and he was plus 700 to win the race when things broke down and they took the green flag. So he looked phenomenal in practice, put the car on the pole, finishes second. Unbelievable race for our guy, Jake Garcia. So I had him to win the championship last year on a super long shot. Maybe we take a little bit sprinkle on that future bet this year. If he can sneak into the playoffs, he might be able to do some damage. The Truck Series in general, I'm just so excited about it because there's so many different guys, so many angles you could take. It's super entertaining. So I could not be more happy as a fan of the Truck Series right now. So Rockingham, very happy with the way things played out there. So we will put that in the rear view. They've had a week off. They kind of cooled off now, and it's time to talk Texas. Okay. Texas Motor Speedway. And, this is a racetrack where a lot of people are pretty hard on it. I don't know, boring races is what we hear with the Cup Series. Trucks, similar situation, tough to pass, that sort of thing. Only 7 lead changes the last 2 races here in the Truck Series. So I think, you're going to want to go with your gut, and it might be a little chalky. The race last year, it was as chalk as you could possibly get. So let me just read you the top 5, right? Because when I sit down and I do my notes, I'm like, all right, any chance of like a longer shot top 5? Like that would be nice to be able to call out some different names, like Garcia last week, right? I went back, looked at it. I mean, Texas last year, we had Kyle Busch dropping down, and he wins the race, followed by Corey Heim, Nick Sanchez, Christian Eckes, and Zane Smith. I mean, the big dogs ate at Texas, and that's consistently kind of how it's been. So I think you should prepare for that as a gambler, right? Maybe not the race to take the big swing and go for the longer shot. Maybe, stick to sort of the guys at the top of the board. So we're going to break down here for you the race. We've got 8 o'clock start time in this one, Eastern time. The practice and qualifying starts earlier Friday afternoon. So we have 2:30 practice, 3:40 qualifying. And then I think that gives a decent chunk of time for the books to open back up. I would expect to see some outrights pop up, and on some of these books, the head-to-heads pop up, but the finishing positions don't. I don't know why. ESPN has been pretty good at that. So we will keep our eyes peeled to see if there's any adjusted lines. It's a 167 race lap. Stage 1 is 40 laps. Stage 2 is 40 laps. And we end with an 87 lap stage 3. So that's the breakdown here on this 1.5-mile cookie cutter racetrack in Fort Worth, Texas. So let's get to it here and talk about our outright section. It's going to be a bit chalky, and I got to go with the main guy here. It's Corey Heim. Now, it's worth mentioning, we have a couple guys dipping down. We have Carson Hocevar dipping down. We have Nick Sanchez dipping down. That you would expect to play a factor into the lines, but not really. And there's a reason for it. Corey Heim's the favorite for a reason. He's just beast mode at these types of racetracks. So let's stick with Texas first. All right. 3 Texas starts in his career. His finishes were 7th, 7th, and 2nd last year. He finished behind Kyle Busch. And in the last 25% of that race, the only driver that was faster than Corey Heim was Kyle Busch. So I love how, if you're looking at his speed progression throughout the race, he was getting faster and faster and faster. That's the kind of thing I want. Kyle Busch, not in the race this year. So Corey Heim, it's his race to lose, essentially. And the other thing that I'm looking at, obviously we're taking a look at Texas individually, but because it's a 1.5 miles, we do have some other comp tracks we can look at. So I'm looking at the last 6 comp tracks. So that's Kansas, Texas, Charlotte. And I know I'm missing one here, but there's 6 races total. No, maybe that's it. Oh, in Vegas. Sorry. So we had Vegas this year. So I'm going back to the start of 2024 and coming up through this year. So we have Vegas in there a couple times. 6 races. Corey Heim in that data set. I mentioned beast mode. There's no other way to describe it. 3 wins. 3. 6 for 6 finishing inside the top 5. I mean, he has figured out these 1.5 miles, and that's what makes him so good. And that's what makes him just the championship favorite, because we're going to be going, this is 1.5 mile season right now, this part of the schedule. So get used to Corey Heim being dominant. That's just kind of what we got. So, I mean, I can't not take him at plus 150. He's first on Win the Races power rankings heading into it. If you need to feel better about it, parlay it with something. I don't care. But for me, I'm taking Corey Heim by itself. Bovada, I mentioned the Derby earlier, right? So if you really want to have some fun, if you have a Bovada account, Bovada lets you bet on horses, and it's like completely different than the real way to bet on horses, where the lines change. And, you could take a horse on a Tuesday, but the line's going to change. Doesn't matter where you got him at. Not on Bovada. You could take the favorite journalism and parlay him with Heim and just have a favorite type weekend. So just an idea. If you don't like the plus 150 line, I understand it, but sometimes it's like, everything's pointing to Corey Heim having a big day. Now, let's move away from him. And you say, all right, well, if it's not going to be Corey Heim, where can we look? What's a different number we could get at? Like I said, I don't want to stray too far from the top dogs, because that's not what Texas gives us. So I am going to mention Nick Sanchez. He's 6-1 on DraftKings right now as I'm recording this on Thursday night. And then I'll kind of migrate into the placement picks here. But Nick Sanchez is a driver that is coming down, that has had success here at Texas. So if we're looking at Kyle Busch last year, right? He's had success at Texas in the past in the Cup Series. He comes down and he just does well here, wins the race and dominates that race. Nick Sanchez, it was not long ago where he was in the Truck Series. It was like last year. So it's not like a random dude coming in, like he's sliding right back in. I kind of think of Zane Smith, right? Where he was in the trucks for a long time. He slides right in. What did he do last year? Finished 5th in the 91 truck. So kind of a similar situation here. He has 2 starts at Texas. He put the car on the pole both times. So knows how to unload fast, knows how to get around the joint in qualifying. I saw there's weather in the area. That could impact some things for Nick Sanchez. You would really like to see him get out there and practice and qualify. There's an early morning thunderstorm. I hope that they're able to get that out of the way and qualify, because if he can't, that's going to be, a little nerve-wracking. But he finished 3rd in this race last year, 16th the race before. But in that race where he finished 16th, you might remember this. He led 168 laps. 168 laps. That's insane. So that was a race where I think we had no live pit stops. I'm kind of remembering this as I'm recording here. So there's no live pit stops. So he just stayed out front the whole race. No one could pass him. And then he gets wrecked by Carson Hocevar. So it's interesting now that they're both away from the Truck Series and they're both coming back to ride for Spire. Now they're teammates in the 7 and 07 trucks. But if you're looking at the last 6 comps, he's got 1 win, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 4 top 15s, and he's 5 for 5. He's only been in 5 of those races, finishing inside the top 20. So I know we're taking him here to win, but the point being is 1.5 miles are not something that he's foreign to. He's pretty good, has a victory, and we love that. 7.8 average finish. That puts him 3rd out of everyone in this race right now in the Truck Series. So he's a decent other option. If you're trying to say, no, Phil, I don't want the favorite in Corey Heim, I need somebody else to look at, I would give Nick Sanchez a shot here because of everything we're saying. He's ranked 2nd on Win the Race, so that tells you something. I could see a lot of people migrating to Hocevar because he's in the Cup Series and all that, but I just think Sanchez's resume is stronger here at Texas for the Truck Series. So that's where we're going. Now, let's move on to the placement picks, and we're going to stay right there with Sanchez, right? If you're not into Sanchez, maybe you're in on Heim, but you want a piece of Sanchez, Bet365 has him at -120 for a top 5, and I really like that. So if you have access to Bet365, that to me is a nice way to get a little action in on Sanchez, because he's looking at like -150 and shorter on other books. So we'll see. Again, practice and qualifying, I would really like to see that. I don't know where he would start if it does get rained out, but I'm not going to put that juju out there. It's a morning thunderstorm on AccuWeather right now. We're not even going to put that out there. So top 5 is another pick that, I feel pretty good about because of the chalky nature of this racetrack. Sanchez is definitely going to be a player in this race. All right, moving on to another driver. And this is the one where I feel like people could probably say to me, hey, this is a little bit more of a stretch here. And I get that. This is also on Bet365. I know it doesn't have that on the screen here, but Ty Majeski for a top 5 at +190. I just want to say to you right now, when do we usually see +190 for Ty Majeski? Now, that is the best book for this, but most books have him around +130, +140. When did we see that for Ty Majeski? It's rare. It's rare. He's usually, a lot shorter than that. So that's like kind of mind-boggling and a little bit jarring to see. So then you say to yourself, well, what's the deal? Is he really not that good here? Like, what's the problem? He's got 4 starts at Texas. 2 of them finished inside the top 5. So a 50% hit rate for this bet. Okay, I'm into that. 3 top 10s. Now, this is where I think practice and qualifying is going to be important for Ty Majeski, because listen to these 4 races and his starting position and finishing position. All right. The point that I'm trying to make is he kind of finishes where he starts for the most part. So going all the way back 4 races ago, started 11th, finished 15th. Started 10th, finished 5th. It's a good progression there. Started 3rd, finished 4th. Okay. Last year, started 11th, finished 10th. So, really, when you average all that out, it's really like 1-to-1. So we really would like him to qualify well, which is something that he does across the circuit. Like, he typically unloads fast and qualifies well. Texas, for whatever reason, these numbers, with the exception of 2 years ago where he started 3rd, he hasn't had that great starting position. So hopefully he gets that, and we'd be in good shape here. He's ranked 4th on Win the Race. He finished 4th at Vegas, another 1.5 mile track earlier this year. So a lot of good things kind of coming for us here in the Ty Majeski camp. And if we're talking chalk, I mean, he's the champion of this series right now. So I would say plus 190 for Ty Majeski is a pretty good number. So that's where we're going with it here with Majeski. Let's get to our matchups because they have been the most fun. I'm calling out 2 this week and then a lean. All right. So 2 head-to-head matchups. We're just on a roll. I think we're like 5-0 the last 2 videos. So here we go. First one up. And I want to shout out my host on The Draft. This is a YouTube show that we do every Wednesday night on YouTube at 8:30 with Ryan Stevens from Win the Race and Tino Patino. We break down the Cup Series on that show as well. Ryan threw this into the group chat this morning and said, hey, talk me off of this. And I looked at it. I said, I just got to get into my stuff later on. I finally broke the notes out, and I fell in love with this bet. Friesen over Rhodes. It was minus 115. Now is at minus 120. On some books, this is minus 130, minus 135. So ESPN has a lot of lines for trucks. I'm really digging ESPN over the last month or so. Sitting at minus 20 right now. I couldn't talk them off of it. And like I said, I myself really fell in love with it. So kind of 2 schools of thought here. Let's focus on each driver individually. But before I do that, Stewart Friesen, the last 3 races at Texas is 3-0 head-to-head against Ben Rhodes. The last 8 races, you want to go back even further, he's 6-2 versus Ben Rhodes. So a clear advantage here for Stewart Friesen in the head-to-head series. And that's going back years where, I know Ben Rhodes is having a down year, which we're about to touch on. But those are years where he was solid and Friesen was still able to beat him. So let's take it one by one here. Stewart Friesen, his last 3 races at Texas, a win, 2 top 5s, and 3 top 15s. Those are his last 3 races at this racetrack. Just a solid driver here. Solid driver all around. Rhodes, for the other hand, here at Texas, has 1 finish in his last 5 races inside the top 20. Inside the top 20. What is going on with Ben Rhodes? And that, by the way, is with some solid starting position, which if you're a Ben Rhodes fan, that's scary. His average starting position is in the top 10, and he's finishing way outside the top 20 in the last 5 races. His best finish was 10th. So that in itself, we've got a driver that clearly enjoys this track and has a win here, is consistently good here, finishing well, and a driver who just cannot get a finish at this track. You're looking at the comp tracks that I mentioned, the last 6 mile and a half. They're pretty similar, right? Pretty similar in average finish and starting position and running position, driver rating, all those stats relatively the same. So we don't have anything to pull from there. But in 2025, Stewart Friesen, his driver rating is much better. His percentage driving inside the top 15, much better than Ben Rhodes. Like, Rhodes is having an awful season, and I don't know why. You can't put your finger on it. Like, what is the problem with the 99? So, and here's another big discrepancy. Mid-race position. So the middle of the race, where are these guys? Friesen is 11.5. Now, He has had some rough finishes along the way that kind of drops his average finish for the season, but 11.5, that means that he's fast enough to be running up there with those guys. Where's Ben Rhodes' average in the middle of the race? 20.x. Like, it just, what's going on? What is happening? So for all of those reasons, I really like Stuart Friesen. This is my favorite bet of the week, minus 120 on ESPN. And if U's win the race, their simulation has this fair at minus 225. So that's just the kicker that I needed to kind of put it over the hump. So Stuart Friesen over Ben Rhodes, lock it in while you can before practice and qualifying. The last one that I have here for you in the head-to-heads is a guy that, spoiler, the next few weeks, right, heading into Memorial Day, from now to Memorial Day, this is Caden Honeycutt season. And so I needed to jump on Honeycutt in some way, shape, or form. There's a part of me that wants to take Honeycutt to win, but it's not going to be this week. I'm taking him. This is maybe a spoiler for next week. I think I'm going to take him as a flyer sprinkle to win next week at Kansas. But mile and a halves are where Caden Honeycutt has my attention. I have been very vocal about this over the last year. He does well on the mile and a halves. We have not seen him at Texas yet, and I'm kind of anxious. I really want to see how he does on this track. Heim is so good here and on these style tracks that it makes me tough to sprinkle on Honeycutt for the outright. But I wanted something on him. And when Caesars matches it up against Brandon Jones, to me, this is punching down in a big way. So Kansas is more of his specialty, but in the last 6 comp tracks, he's got an average finish of 7.0. He's second in the Truck Series in that number, just right in front of Nick Sanchez and behind Corey Heim. We're talking about Caden Honeycutt, okay? He is not at that, like, big dog varsity level yet, I think, in a lot of names, right? When you're thinking about the Truck Series, you're thinking of Heim, you're thinking of Majeski, you're thinking of Chandler Smith, Daniel Hemrick, Grant Enfinger. Like, these are the big guys. Caden Honeycutt's not there yet. And so I think as a gambler, I'm taking advantage of this because we're getting a decent matchup here. The fact that they would give us this matchup against Jones, I'm licking my chops. So we've got a situation where he's never run at Texas, but to me, that's blank slate. That's excitement. I think that, we could really see a surprise and him just continue to do what he's been doing on these mile and a halves and blow some people away. So it could be a sleeper here. Now, Brandon Jones in this one truck, he's coming down to race in this truck. 3 starts this season in the one truck, 0 top 10s, 12th, 32nd, and 17th. Like, this is a mid-pack truck. Not to say Brandon Jones isn't a good driver. He is. But this truck just isn't getting it done. This situation, this part-time driver, right? And that's really the kicker here. We've got a driver who is, competing for the playoffs, full-time driver who's great on mile and a halves, really, second in average finish in this series, versus a truck that's not that great running this year, and a driver who's part-time. Oh, come on. Let's go. So I think we're going to keep this head-to-head streak going here, knocking on wood, but Honeycutt over Jones, minus 130. This is much shorter on other books. I saw minus 135. I saw minus 140. So Caesars is giving it to us here at a decent number. So I love it. Those head-to-heads, I'm getting excited here heading into Friday night. Now, let's finish off the show where I just kind of rant and rave a little bit and, don't have any other best bets to call out officially, but I wanted to talk through a couple things. And this segment has been pretty hot, actually. We talked about Garcia. We talked about Chandler Smith the week before. So let's talk about Chandler Smith real quick here. He is someone that is like on my radar. I was about to throw another head-to-head matchup versus Lane Riggs for Chandler Smith, and I ended up not pulling the trigger. He only has 2 starts here at Texas. He has 2 top 10 finishes for Chandler Smith, 7.0 average finish. So, it is what it is. But Lane Riggs, I struggle. He only has 1 start here. He finished 31st. So that's not much of a data point to pull from. You can't be like, oh, well, he stinks here. On mile and a half comp tracks, his average finish 17.8. That's not really what I'm looking for, right? It's kind of leading me to feel like, hey, maybe he's worth fading. But in that metric, Chandler Smith only has one race, and it was Las Vegas where he finished 8th. So it's tough. We're kind of going back and forth, but I'm leaning Smith in that matchup. And, I would not be surprised if Chandler Smith did well. So we'll see. Chandler Smith. And I'm realizing that I had Chandler Smith earlier mentioning as a McAnally truck. And what am I thinking? He is a front row truck. So my apologies for the breakdown of Rockingham. But in any case, we move on. The last guy that I wanted to mention that I just can't wrap my head around, don't know how to play him, Grant Enfinger. I have not talked about Enfinger that much this season. And it's because this season, he's really just been okay. Like 10.3 average finish. That's not really getting me what I need. And he's not starting well. He's starting 13.7. He hasn't been all that fast. So I don't know how to play someone like a Grant Enfinger, even though I want to. I didn't see a matchup that made sense. In 12 career starts at Texas, he's got 5 top 5 finishes. But the thing is, he hasn't had it since a third place finish in 2021. So it's tough. If I got a matchup that I felt good about, I would maybe play it, but I haven't seen one yet. Like right now, he's matched up against Daniel Hemrick. Hemrick is having a decent season, and he was the McAnally truck that I was thinking of when I was giving the Rockingham breakdown, as far as McAnally looking good. So tough deal. Hemrick, Enfinger, they're both guys that like I want to be in on because I feel like this might be a racetrack where especially Enfinger could like kind of break through for a top 5 and show his like veteran presence here. But because we go to that like chalky nature conversation again, but it's just tough. I couldn't pull the trigger to throw him in on a certain bet. So putting his name out there because I want to hear like, is it a full pass? Is there a way to play Enfinger or, Hemrick for that matter this week? That's what we talk about here in the finish line. We just kind of riff to end the show. So that is going to wrap things up. I hope everyone enjoys this episode. Let me know who you are on heading into Friday Night Lights this week for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. And good luck this weekend, whether it's the Truck Series, whether it's that Kentucky Derby or the Cup Series. Let me know who you're on and have a good week, and we'll see you next week.